So my name is Orla McAvinue and I am a creative director in TrueStory. I studied visual communications at DIT Mountjoy Square, which is now of course TU Dublin, and was an amazing course. So we did all of the basics: typography, illustration, photography. It was a brilliant course. What's interesting about that course is when I started, which was 1998, we didn't really go near computers at all. So we only really got computers at third year, I think. All of us sort of had a Mac at home for fourth year, but it meant that straight away from the beginning, it was all about the big idea. It was never about getting kind of flustered or concerned with trends or what was happening in the world. It was always about that creative idea at the start. So I guess I'm really grateful for the college for instilling that in me at such an early stage. It was a great time. But I preface it by saying it, when I left school, I had no idea about design. I had no idea about creative design, like interior design, graphic design. I did a PLC course in Dundalk, which was a portfolio course. And only for that course, I would never have known the whole world that was available to me. Someone who wasn't really good at drawing or painting or anything like that, but really wanted to be involved in the creative industries. So I guess looking back, the school I went to was fantastic, but it was very academically driven. There was always a couple of girls who were really, really good at art, and they would go on to NCAD. But all of the rest of us were pointed towards different industries, you know, science, teaching, all of the usual ones, I think. Majority of people went to UCD or Trinity or went up the north to do projects. My parents advised me to defer a place that I got up in Coleraine for a psychology course and said, why don't you go and do this PLC in Dundalk and see how you get on. The PLC was absolutely amazing. So there was maybe 15 of us there. It was up in the tech, up in Dundalk, and we did everything. So we did a bit of fashion, we did a bit of photography, we did everything, and it was a glorious year. I graduated in 2002 and there really weren't very many jobs going at all. And the landscape in Dublin was very different to what it is now. So there were a number of very well established, very well regarded agencies, but everybody was fighting to get in the doors of those agencies. And it was before you would really email someone. So you'd be sending out mailers, you'd be trying to ring and get in contact with people, and you were constantly trying to hustle to get in. Eventually, after months and months and months, I got 2 weeks work experience in Image Now. And I stayed for 4.5 years, and it was just incredible. I loved it. It was the best grounding I could have got in the industry. The guys are just truly passionate about design, and amazing things happened. Like Wim Crowell came over and spent 3 days working with us and reviewed my work. Things that I can't believe actually happened in Image Now. And when I left there, I moved to London and I spent 5 years working in London. So a variety of agencies, sometimes permanent positions, but also an awful lot of freelance. London's huge and there is such a wide array of companies doing all sorts of different things that I kind of wanted to try as many things as I could. And also, probably looking back, I was probably a wee bit overwhelmed by the amount of choice that there was over there, but it was an amazing experience. I moved back to Dublin to take up a role in the brand union. Again, fantastic experience working on huge global brands. And when they pulled out of Dublin, Phoebe and Sarah, who were my bosses, set up TrueStory, and I joined them a few years later. So obviously a creative director is slightly different in every agency. We have 3 in ours, and my job is to tell the client story in a true and compelling way for the intended audience, and to make sure that that story works across all of their touch points, and to make sure the creative is as good as it possibly can be, and to make sure if it's products, to make sure that they stand out on shelf and that they have a point of difference. That's my job, to make sure that all of my team deliver as well. Ultimately, the buck stops with me for my clients and for my projects. The other thing that is a really important part of my role is building relationships with clients. At TrueStory, we really rarely do one job for one client. We have really long-standing relationships with our clients. And I think that's because we work really collaboratively with them. And that means that we're constantly working on new projects with them. So it's a varied role, but one that I really love. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is really a normal average day. I think the main thing is You need to be as organised as you can be, but be prepared to be as flexible as you possibly can be, because you never know what's coming at you. At the minute, we're still working remotely, so there'll be a number of catch-ups a week with the team to make sure we know what's happening that day, happening that week, happening that month, make sure everybody's happy and knows what they're doing. Then I'll have individual catch-ups with team members, make sure everybody's cool, everybody's doing well. I'm still really lucky that I get to do design myself, so I'll be carving out time in the day to do that. And then depending on where we are in projects, catching up with illustrators, photographers, animators, whoever's collaborating with us on projects. So busy old day. I definitely work better under pressure. I could work for hours and hours and days and weeks on a project if I was allowed, and that doesn't mean that it's going to give you a good result. I think a little bit of pressure is a good thing. It makes you trust your gut a little bit more. It makes you go with your instinct a little bit more. And also I think that designs then have a little bit more of a vibrancy about them, a little bit more energy that maybe if you overwork things, might become apparent. So I'm all for a little bit of pressure. So I have 4-year-old twins, so there's not a lot of downtime. But what I have discovered, particularly as they get older, is the joys of drawing and colouring and Lego and building things with blocks and all of this kind of playfulness that you don't really get to do as an adult until little people reappear in your life when you're older. So I think actually my work has probably become a little bit more playful because of that. And then the other thing that kind of keeps me on the straight and narrow is just trying to get as much sleep as I possibly can. Sometimes a project, you're just not gelling with a project. Maybe you're just having a tricky month. Maybe you've had a couple of projects that haven't gone your way for a particular reason. And creative block is kind of scary. What I try to do, or what I found works for me, is if you're sitting looking at the computer, things are not going to get better. So get up from the computer and go outside and have a walk. Just step away from the computer. And that is the first thing that's going to help what creative block, or definitely does for me. And then the second thing, and this is kind of scary, particularly for creatives who love everything to be beautifully crafted and pristine before they share. One of the best things is to print everything out as it is, get it up on the wall, grab whoever you can from around the studio and ask them their opinions. For 5 minutes, what resonates with you? What are you drawn to? This is what I'm trying to achieve. Get their input as kind of quickly as you possibly can, and that helps so enormously. And the other thing that I found really helps when you print stuff up and you put it on the wall is that you're looking at things at scale. So if it's a big piece of packaging, you're going to see it at scale. If it's a logo that needs to work at a really small scale, you're going to see it at scale. And because you're going to have literally a bit distance between you and your work, you can get rid of all of the clutter and the stuff that isn't working. And I always find it's really freeing to, rip stuff up and cross stuff out and write notes up. It's a far more healthy way of working. So that's how I've found helps me with creative block, and that's for a lot of trial and error over the years. Like there's loads of people that inspire me, but I think it's more a type of person that I find inspiring to be around, and that's someone who is kind of unapologetically themselves, but also unapologetically enthusiastic. And that's the type of person that you want to have around you when you're working through a project. And someone who just gets stuck in and gets it done and has a good attitude, I just find that so inspiring when that happens. So they're the type of people that I like to have around me, and that's who I find inspiring. I'm never happy with anything, and that's like a classic design thing to say, but I'm never happy with anything. Sometimes I'm nearly happy with something, but there's always things when you look at it and you go, I could have done that a little bit better, or always. So the drive is to always do it a little bit better the next time round. And I guess see if you can make the process work a wee bit better. Can we work a bit faster or a bit more collaboratively? Can we, kind of revisit the structure? But then the other thing is that I work with really smart people, and I am definitely not the smartest person in the room by any stretch of the imagination. So it's just always trying to keep up with them. That's the other driver. like, it's a tough industry. Creative industry is really tough. You have to put yourself out there all day, every day. You're selling ideas internally, externally, and it can take its toll. And I think we all know people who have suffered from burnout. We all know people who suffer from anxiety within the industry, and it's real. And I know I worked in a studio in London that was pretty tricky place to be in, and you would kind of dread crits because you wouldn't know what was going to come your way, and things that were not constructive, and that made you really question whether you knew what you were doing at all. And I know after that particular experience, I just thought, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not smart. I can't get it, whatever it is. And at that point, I really thought maybe I'm just in the wrong industry entirely. Thankfully, I was able to just see that I maybe just needed to remove myself from that particular situation. And I think that's really important, that some studios are going to work well with you, you're going to gel with that agencies, and some you don't, and that's okay. But yeah, at that point, I kind of thought maybe this isn't for me. But thankfully, I stuck at it. So this was a really hard question. But the studio that I really admire is JKR. I just absolutely love what they do. They work on these huge rebrands, global brands that so many people around the world identify with and feel ownership of, like Burger King. They've just done M&M's, Domino's, these big consumer brands. And they manage to make them feel fresh. They managed to make them feel glorious and breathe new life into them. And there's just a lovely lightness of touch to what they do. I just think they're a great agency. Because we're coming out of a recession, like, I listen to all sorts of podcasts when I'm working. So Adam Buxton and all of those things. And I love his podcast because you never know who's going to interview, and you go down the rabbit hole finding out about all sorts of different people who do different things. But when it comes to television, I'm drawn towards things that are a little bit gentler. Things like Portrait Artist of the Year, Grayson Perry's Art Club. My favourite programme of the last while was Gone Fishing with Paul Whitehouse and Bob Mortimer, which was just absolutely glorious. And I guess probably why I was drawn to it is because they're just lovely human beings, and they're out in nature, and it's about friendship, and maybe we're all thinking about that, having come out the other end, fingers crossed, of a pandemic.